I want to start off by focusing on the final scene of Silo, a flashback set 352 years ago in Washington, D.C. The reason we know it's 352 years ago is because Bernard told Lucas earlier in the season that the silos were built 352 years ago, and now we're seeing the world as it was before it became a nuclear wasteland. And we learn a few things in this final scene that sets up season 3. For example, we learned that nuclear war started between the US and Iran. Now, this is not a geopolitical channel, even though I have multiple college degrees in political science as well as international relations. We're not going to get into that. We're going to take this and focus mainly on Silo and just what happened, because I think season 3 is going to focus on how exactly the world came to be the way it is and why everyone is in the silo. So guys, don't worry, we're gonna dive into all that in this video and break it all down. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new here. We broke down every silo episode this season, and we're gonna be doing the same thing for Severance season 2, so definitely click the subscribe button. Before we can truly understand what this final scene means and what it means for season 3, I can tell you guys already that the third season I feel like is going to be set between Silo 18, and we're gonna get into that final scene with her and Bernard. But because Juliet is now back in Silo 18, we're going to be flashing back and forth between Silo 18 and in the flashback timeline in Washington, D.C. Why exactly did they put a safeguard procedure in the first place? I think the two characters that we're talking in the flashback are two of the founders of the Silo program. The reason I came up with this conclusion is because of the relic that we saw. The Pez dispenser that used to belong to Juliet and now Sims has given to his son was a gift that was given to somebody 352 years ago. That means that Pez dispenser has been around for 3 centuries. That goes to show something as mundane as a Pez dispenser. If you don't know the history of anything, you might think it's something bigger than what it is. It's a relic that's forbidden in the silos, but to us and the people in the flashback, it's just a Pez dispenser. But before I can truly tie that flashback scene to the rest of Silo season 2, we have to break down the entire finale, but more specifically, Juliet's role and the fact that she finally made it to Silo 18 and she cleaned. She got there just in time to stop a rebellion, because had she not gotten there, Patrick Kennedy and his rebels would have gotten past Bernard and made it outside. So let's talk about what happened between Juliet and Bernard, that final scene. Are they alive? Of course Juliet's alive. Rebecca Ferguson is Rebecca Ferguson. But more specifically though, how exactly in the show did they survive? Especially after Lucas told Bernard what he knew about the safeguard procedure, which instantly broke Bernard. Bernard didn't want to be head of IT anymore. Lucas didn't want to be the shadow. Sims became head of IT. I didn't see that coming. I don't know if you guys saw it coming, but I didn't think it would happen that way. Bernard just gave up on life, and the only thing that brought him back was his desire to eliminate Juliet, because he feels like she was the catalyst behind all of this. However, Juliet and Solo figured out how to stop the safeguard procedure, and that's thanks to Solo. And again, I have to say, I owe Solo a big apology. Solo is the sole reason why Juliet was able to save her silo. Not just that, Solo is the crux to why they're going to stop the safeguard procedure, because he knows exactly how to stop it. You see, we learned in this episode that Solo as a child, the last thing he saw of his parents was them talking about the safeguard procedure and how to stop it, which ties into the hard drive from season 1 and Salvatore Quinn's message. You see, all the little tidbits that we've been getting throughout the first 2 seasons all coalesce to this. The blueprints of the silo, the tunnel at the bottom of the silo, we initially thought it was a connection between all the silos and the 51st silo. However, when Lucas went down there, the news that he got from the silo's algorithm, aka the AI, we don't know exactly what it told him, but I have a pretty good idea what it might have been. I think the AI or the algorithm, however you want to call it, is the one running the show. Even though the head of IT is in charge, even though we have all these things in place, the AI is always listening, always watching, and when it deems one of the silos a failure, like Silo 17 or Silo 18, it releases the safeguard procedure, which we found out is a poison. A lot of people in the comment section were saying it's nanites. However, we learned that it's a poison that's released. And that makes a lot of sense, because what Solo explained to us earlier in this season is that once Silo 17 went outside, everybody was okay initially. However, the wind blew and a big pile of dust came and everyone died. Initially, I thought it was a radiation storm. Some people thought it was nanites, but we know the truth. It was poison. Poison released from the silo on level 14. Level 14 is very close to IT. Now we're starting to see how it ties into the hard drive as well as the maps. Because if we're breaking down the maps of the silo, aside from the tunnel at the bottom, there were 2 other tunnels in the blueprint. One of them we know leads to the power source that powers IT on the outside. And that's the same power source behind the vault of the IT that powers the AI, which is why even if mechanical shuts down the power, the AI, the algorithm will always be here. That's why it can wipe out the silo, because it's a failed experiment. And now we're starting to see that maybe, just maybe, the silos themselves are not the after effects of a nuclear fallout, but actually a preemptive measure to nuclear war. What I'm guessing is, before the world went to shit and nuclear war was afoot, the people 352 years ago built these nuclear bunkers, unless, of course, because there's 51 silos, the 51st silo is the people who are in charge of every other silo, the people who created the silos in the first place. And it's not about taking refuge inside the silos because the earth is uninhabitable. It's more so, can we as humanity survive in this enclosed space if need be? The truth of the matter is, humanity can. Even though we've had so many rebellions, we know that Salvatore Quinn ended up erasing everyone's mind so that we can have 140 years of peace. But I think it's more than that. Humans as a whole are able to come together, because even though Bernard felt he had the heads up and he was following the order, which I now think that the order itself was written by the algorithm of the AI and not by humans, because it's so rigid and it doesn't leave flexibility or human emotion and experience inside of it. And that's why Bernard lost and the rebellion would have won. And that's why the rebellion in Silo 17 succeeded. Order doesn't allow you to be flexible. That sounds a lot like machine learning, because even though Bernard had his thumb on Walker and he overheard the plan between Walker, Knox, and Shirley, Knox and Walker were speaking in code the entire time, because as humans, we learn to adapt to our surroundings for better or for worse. When it comes to Walker and Knox and Mechanical as a whole, because they can't hear each other due to how loud the generator is, they were able to develop a form of sign language. When it comes to someone like Billings, he suffered from the syndrome, and that's because he was trapped underground, and that's not humanity's natural state. So we see how different people adapt to life in the silo. If you follow the order or the pack by the book and you isolate yourself from your fellow man, you end up like Billings when he had the syndrome. But once Billings started to live a little bit and he started to be around the people of Mechanical and have that community, that camaraderie, the symptoms of the syndrome went away and he felt more alive, which explains why Patrick Kennedy was able to rouse so many other people up. It's something called collective effervescence, which is a phenomenon where a lot of people are in one area together. They start to feel the same thing, even though they're all different people and have different reactions to what's going on. A collective feeling is able to sweep over a lot of people in the same space if the energy is being shared. With that being said, let's shift to the flashback that was set 352 years ago and how that plays into season 3. Like I said earlier, I think season 3 is going to take place in Silo 18, as well as flashbacks to 352 years ago. And I think we're going to spend some time in Silo 17 again, because Juliet said she's not going to stop trying until she can get back to Solo. I think eventually she's gonna have Solo, Eater, and the rest of them move to Silo 18, but only after she stops the safeguard procedure. So let's talk about how to stop the safeguard procedure. The last time we saw Juliet and Bernard, they were supposed to be incinerated. The AI, the algorithm, shut the doors behind them and they were trapped inside the room that incinerates. When Juliet and Bernard were burned, they weren't burned, they didn't die. If you look closely, Juliet was pulled away right before she was consumed by the fire, showing us that she survived. Her and Bernard are going to be working together. But what's interesting is, how are they going to be able to work together if the AI can listen to them? And that's where Lucas comes in, because Lucas was able to talk to Bernard and tell Bernard exactly what was going on without the AI hearing. So there's a way to communicate without the algorithm hearing you, but the wrench in their plans and what's going to be the biggest obstacle for them in season 3 is Sims and his wife. Sims wanted to be the head of IT, however, the algorithm chose his wife. The reason Sims' wife was chosen over him is the exact same reason why Bernard told him he never chose him as his shadow, because he lacks imagination. He's more rigid. And because he's more rigid, I think the AI might think he's a little too inflexible and he may not be able to think between the lines like it expects him to. But we saw his wife. She's willing to play both sides and come out on top for the betterment of what she thinks is the silo. And that's going to be stop Julia and Bernard from getting to level 14 and stopping the safeguard procedures. I'm pretty certain the way you stop the safeguard procedures is by knocking the power off to the IT vault, which is very dangerous because that itself is the lifeline of the silo, but that might also be the only way to stop it from poisoning everyone in here. And it seems to me that the poison isn't instantaneous, because after Silo 17 won the rebellion, we saw the sheriff kill the head of IT over there called Russell and then go outside. So that goes to show me that it takes a while for the safeguard procedures to actually kick in. and poison everybody else, because it's a lot of people to poison. Think about it, 10,000 people. That gives Juliet and Bernard a little wiggle room to work. But that brings forward a bigger question. If the silos were created 352 years ago, why did the creators or the founders of the silo put this safeguard procedure in there in the first place? Because if outside was uninhabitable and the people in the silo open the door and they will die eventually, why poison everybody if they're going to die eventually, unless outside is habitable and the people going outside might be able to leave the area where the silo is and get to a real society? Who's to say exactly how long they've been in the silo? Who's to say it's not just one generation or two generations of people living in the silo, and because their memories were wiped, they don't know just how long? Because the very first thing we learn about silo in the very first episode is we don't know who built the silo and why. But now we have an idea. The world went to nuclear war with Iran. The US government seems to play a bigger role in this than we thought because of the flashback in Washington, D.C. And the fact that the US was already hit by a dirty bomb in the flashback, and people who live their regular lives have to be scanned for radiation just to enter a restaurant, goes to show that this was an imminent threat. However, if they're keeping the people trapped inside the silo by essentially threat of death, if they leave, they will die, not by the environment, but the people who created the silo are going to be the ones to kill them with a poison called the safeguard procedure. That makes me think that there's nothing wrong with outside, and this is all just to see if and only if nuclear fallout were to happen, humanity may be able to survive it. Of the 51 silos, we know 50 of them are just like Juliet's Silo 18, where it's a bunch of people living inside of there being controlled by IT. And however, now we know Silo 17, even though there's only 6 people there, and Silo 18 all are rallying behind Juliet. We know that Juliet has the ability now to go to different silos. So what if next season she's going to other silos, uniting everyone together and trying to figure out just how to bypass whatever it is that's going on with them and that's keeping them trapped in these silos, because they all want to go outside. It's not just Silo 17, it's not just Silo 18. It's human nature to want to go outside, and season 3 is going to explore that even more. And recently, Rebecca Ferguson dropped the news that Silo has been renewed for 2 more seasons, meaning that the show's ending in the 4th season. So we're going to get answers very soon, and I, for one, can't wait until the next season of Silo. My favorite thing about Silo, besides the fact that the show is so good, is the fact that we don't have to wait 2 years between seasons like all of the other shows we're watching, and that Silo is probably going to come out later this year or next year. So I'm super excited. In the meantime, we have Severance dropping episodes on a weekly basis that we're going to be covering on this channel. That's it for Silo Season 2, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, peace.